The camera alert came through at 4:04 in the morning while I was scraping old candle wax off the oilcloth with my thumbnail. I don't know why I was doing that. Grief makes you fix stupid things. 3 days earlier, I'd watched 4 of the seasonal guys from the orchard lower my dad's plain pine casket into the clay behind St. Jude's. I knew the weight of it. I knew the cheap satin lining down near his collar. I knew the way the gravel sounded when the first shovel went in, like someone pouring dry beans into a bucket. I'd stood there and let it sound like that, over and over, until Tomas put a hand on my shoulder and I realized everyone else had already started walking back to the cars. But on my phone, the black and white feed from the north fence showed his green Mackinaw coat. Same split in the left shoulder he got during the '98 cleanup, the one he never let me sew because he said it let the heat out when he worked. Same heavy, flat-footed hitch in his right knee. He was carrying an empty yellow harvest crate, walking away from the lens, toward the gray dead strip where we haven't grown a tree since the '98 pesticide spill. I sat there. I want to be honest about that. I didn't scream. I didn't drop the phone. I just sat and watched 30 seconds of clip loop twice, and then I told myself it was Tomas. Tomas is the crew boss. He's been here since the spill, and he walks a little heavy too. He probably had one of Dad's coats. People give away coats after a funeral. That's a normal thing people do. My aunt took a whole box of my grandmother's cardigans the day after her service, and nobody thought a thing of it. That's what I told myself. Somebody had a coat, and I was a woman awake at 4 in the morning making shapes out of the dark. I believed that until about 6 that morning, which is when I went out to the dead strip. There's no soil left out there worth the name. It's this pale, cracked crust the color of an old scar, and it crunches when you walk on it, and nothing green comes up through it, not even the weeds that eat the rest of the county. Dad used to say the ground gave up out there. I always figured he meant the chemistry of it, the way the spray soaked down and killed whatever bacteria makes dirt behave like dirt. Now I'm not so sure that's what he meant. There were footprints. That's the thing I keep coming back to. Real ones pressed into the crust, heading away from the fence in a straight line. Right foot dragging just slightly, catching the edge of each print, the way a bad knee makes you scuff. And beside them, dragging the whole way, 2 thin parallel grooves. The kind a harvest crate makes when you're too tired to lift it and you just let one corner ride along the ground. I followed them maybe 40 yards before they stopped. Not faded out. Stopped. Both feet together, side by side, and then nothing. No turnaround, no scuff, no sign he'd walked back. Just 2 footprints, and then clean cracked crust all the way to the tree line that isn't a tree line anymore. Just gray stumps we never bothered to pull. I stood at the end of those 2 prints for a long time. I even crouched down and put my own hand flat next to the right one, the dragging one, to see if maybe it was mine from some earlier walk I'd forgotten. It wasn't mine. It was bigger, and the drag was on the wrong side for me. I called Tomas from right there in the field. I remember my voice sounded fine, which surprised me. He picked up on the second ring, and there was a coffee maker gurgling behind him, and a radio, and he was clearly in his own kitchen 4 miles down the road. I asked him, real casual, whether he'd been up at the north fence in the night. He said no. I asked if he still had that green coat of Dad's. There was a pause, and he said Dad never gave him a coat. He said your father wasn't the type to give a man his coat while he was still using it, which was true. And I hadn't thought about that until Thomas said it out loud. Dad wasn't the type. Dad kept his things. He mended what tore, and he wore it until it fell off him, and then he wore it a while longer. That Mackinaw went into the casket with him. I put it there. I remember the weight of it in my arms, and how I folded the split shoulder in on itself so it wouldn't show, and how the funeral guy looked at me a little funny for insisting. He asked if I was sure, in that soft voice they use, and I said yes, and I tucked it down along his side myself so nobody would have to touch it after me. So I stood in the dead strip with the phone against my ear and Thomas asking if I was all right, and I said I was, and I hung up, and I did not tell him about the footprints. I want to explain why. It's going to sound bad. Part of it was that I didn't want him to think grief had cooked my head. But the bigger part, the honest part, is that some quiet voice in me had already decided the footprints belonged to my father, and I didn't want anyone else to walk out here and disagree with me. I wanted them to stay mine. Isn't that strange? You'd think you'd want somebody to talk you out of a thing like that. You'd think you'd want the phone call where a sensible person says, "Honey, that's a coyote track," or "That's an old print filled with frost," and you laugh and feel foolish and go to bed. I didn't want that call. I wanted to keep the version where he'd been here. I went back to the house and I pulled every camera clip from the last 3 nights. That's when the story got worse, and I mean worse in a way I hadn't braced for. Because he wasn't just there the night of the alert. He was there the night before, and the night before that. The system only pings me when something crosses the north fence line, so I'd only gotten the one alert. But scrubbing back through the footage frame by frame, I found him on all 3 nights, always between 4 and 4:30, always the same walk, always the same yellow crate, except the crate wasn't always empty. The first night, 3 nights back, the crate was full. You couldn't tell of what, just dark, heaped up over the lip. The second night, it was maybe half. And the night of the alert, the night I actually saw him live, it was empty. And that's when he'd finally crossed the fence line close enough to trip the sensor. Like he'd been coming closer each night. Like he'd been carrying something out to the dead strip and leaving it there, load by load, and on the 3rd trip he'd run out, and the empty crate was lighter, so he'd wandered nearer the fence. I sat with that. What do you carry out to a poisoned field in the dark, a crate at a time, and set down and walk away from? I ran the clips again, looking for the moment he set anything down, but the camera never caught it. He always walked out of frame with the crate still in his hand, out toward the stumps, into the part of the strip no lens covered. Whatever he did out there, he did it where I couldn't see. I didn't sleep that day. I told myself I'd go out at 4 the next morning and I'd stand at the north fence and I'd wait. And if it was somebody in a coat playing a cruel joke, I'd deal with them. And if it was nobody, if the crust stayed empty and quiet, then I'd know it was the footage doing something wrong, the compression stuttering, a shadow the camera had misread into a shape I needed it to be. Either answer was survivable. That's what I kept telling myself. Both answers I could live with. I got neither. At 4 the next morning, I was standing at the north fence with a work light and a coat of my own, and my heart going like a rabbit's, and the dead strip was empty. 10 past 4, empty. 20 past. I started to feel almost sick with relief, that particular loose feeling you get when a thing you dreaded just quietly doesn't happen. I'd been right the ordinary way. The footage had glitched, or an animal had crossed and the camera had done something stupid with the frames, and my dad was in the ground behind St. Jude's where I'd put him, and I was a grieving woman who hadn't slept. I even remember thinking about breakfast. I remember thinking I'd fry an egg and go to bed, and this would be the thing I laughed about someday, the week I chased my father across a dead field. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, the camera alert. North fence, crossing, and I was standing at the north fence. I could see the whole fence line under my light. There was nobody on it. Nobody had crossed it. But the alert had fired, and when I pulled up the live feed on my phone, standing right there, staring at the same stretch of ground with my own eyes, the feed showed him. Green coat, bad knee, crossing the fence 12 feet to my left, hitching along with the crate, plain as morning. 12 feet to my left there was nothing, cracked crust and the work light and the cold. I looked at the empty ground, and I looked at the phone showing me the not empty ground, and I did the thing you're not supposed to do, the thing that in hindsight I can't believe I did. I walked toward where the phone said he was, watching the screen, trying to line myself up with him. And on the screen, I got closer and closer, and the coat filled the frame, and I reached out with my free hand into the empty air where he should have been. The feed cut to black, not froze, went black, clean, like something had covered the lens. And in that black, the phone played back, at full volume, the sound of gravel being poured into a bucket. Dry beans into a bucket, the sound from the graveside. My camera doesn't record audio. It's never recorded audio in its life. I checked the model number later that morning, sitting on my kitchen floor, to be sure I wasn't making that part up. It doesn't have a microphone. There's a spot on the spec sheet where the microphone would be listed, and it just says, none. And I read that line maybe 10 times, like reading it again would change what I'd heard standing out there in the dark with my hand in empty air. I threw the phone. I want that on the record too, that I'm not somebody who stays cool. I threw it across the crust and I heard it skitter, and I stood in the dead strip in the dark with just my work light, and I said his name out loud. I said, Dad. Just that. Nothing answered. Of course nothing answered. But the work light, which runs off a big rechargeable battery pack, the light started to dim, slow, browning down like a bad sunset. And in the failing light I saw, out toward the gray stumps where the footprints had stopped the day before, that the crust was disturbed, turned over. A long, low mound of it, like the pale crust had been peeled back and something dark heaped underneath and then covered again, badly, the way you cover something when you're in a hurry, and it's 4 in the morning and you have to finish before someone wakes. And there, at the near end of the mound, close to me, sat the crate itself, an actual crate resting on the crust with its mouth open. That's where the crates had gone. All that dark heaped stuff he'd been carrying out night after night, load by load, buried in a strip of ground where nothing rots because nothing lives in it to do the rotting. I didn't go look. I want to be clear that I did not walk over and dig in that mound with my hands, because the light was almost gone, and because I was starting to understand something, and the understanding was worse than any hole in the ground could have been. Here's what I understood, standing there. When I'd first looked at the grooves, I'd told myself the crust was more crumbled at the mound end, like the crate had been shoved out that way and dumped. But that wasn't a shove. That was drag. The crumbled lip faced the house. The grooves in the crust didn't run out toward the mound. They ran back. 2 shallow parallel tracks pressed into the ground, coming away from that heap and pointing at the house, and the empty crate sitting right at the near end of them like something had just been set down into it. And tonight the crate had been empty from the start. I'd seen it on the phone before the screen went black. Empty, and turned toward me, mouth open. That's when it went cold in my chest, because if the crate wasn't going out full, then he wasn't burying anymore. He'd come to collect. I ran. I'm not proud of the sounds I made running. I left the work light where it stood, browning out, and I left the phone somewhere on the crust, and I ran back across 40 yards of ground that crunched like something breaking under me the whole way, and I did not look at the fence, and I did not look at where the screen had said he was, and I got inside my dad's kitchen, and I put the deadbolt across, and I sat down on the floor against the cabinets, exactly where I'd been scraping candle wax 2 mornings before. I stayed there until the sun came up for real, and when it was properly light, gray light, ordinary light, I made myself get up and look out the north window toward the dead strip. The work light was off, dead, drained flat. I could see it lying on its side. I could not see the phone. And the mound out by the stumps, the turned-over strip of pale crust, was gone. Smooth, flat, like it had never been disturbed at all. Like the ground had closed over whatever he'd buried the way water closes over a stone. I told myself the light had tricked me. Failing batteries, tired eyes, a woman who hadn't slept in days. I'm good at telling myself things. I've been doing it since the funeral, but I couldn't tell myself the mound had never been there because I'd followed the footprints to it. I couldn't tell myself the footage had glitched because the phone had played a sound my camera can't make. I was running out of the ordinary things I could hide behind, and I want you to understand how much I wanted just one more of them. I stood at that window with a mug of coffee I'd made out of habit and never drank, going through the list of harmless explanations one by one and crossing each of them off. And when the list was empty, I just kept standing there because I didn't know what a person does after that. I called Tomas again. I told him everything this time. All of it. The coat, the crate, the mound, the sound. I heard the coffee maker again behind him. He was quiet a long while. And then he said something I've been carrying around ever since. Something I didn't expect and didn't want. He said, "Your dad used to do the same thing, out at the north fence. Before you were born, when the spill was fresh and the strip first went dead." He said your dad used to go out there at night with a crate. Everybody knew. Nobody asked. Tomas said he'd asked once, just once, early on, what he was doing out there, and your dad said he was putting something back where it belonged, and he said it in a voice that made Tomas never ask again. I asked Tomas what my dad had been burying out there all those years, and Tomas said he didn't know, and I could tell by his voice that he was telling the truth. And I could also tell that he'd thought about it for 30 years and had his own answer and just wasn't going to say it to me. He said one more thing before he hung up. He said, "You should stop looking at those cameras." He said your father stopped right at the end, wouldn't watch the feeds anymore the last week before he passed, turned the tablet face down and left it, said he didn't want to see it coming. That's when I remembered. He'd had an old system out there for years, and then when he got sick, that last month, he'd made me take it all down and put it all back up, every unit from scratch. He was too weak to climb the fence post himself, so he stood down below and told me exactly where to aim each one. He'd point with his cane and say up a little, and to the right, and hold it there, and I'd tighten the bracket while he watched the small screen on the tablet in his lap to make sure the shot was what he wanted. It took us the better part of 2 days. I thought he was just being particular, the way he was particular about everything. And I'd thought, at the time, how good it was that he still cared about the place, still wanted eyes on the orchard even dying. I thought it was love of the land. He'd been aiming them at the dead strip, every one of them. He hadn't been watching the orchard at all. He'd been watching that strip of ground, and he'd been watching the north fence, and now I understand the word he used when I asked why we needed so many. He said, "So I'll get warning." I thought he meant warning of trespassers. Kids, thieves, the usual. He meant warning of this. I've spent the last 2 nights not sleeping and not going near the north side of the house. I brought the phone back in. It works fine. The footage from that night is gone, all of it. The 3 nights of him with the crate, the live feed, everything, wiped clean like the Mound was wiped clean, and I can't tell you if the system erased it or if I did in some hour I don't remember. What's left is one file I didn't make and can't delete. 30 seconds. It's from tonight, from an hour ago. It's the north fence, and it's my own work light lying dead in the crust where I left it, and there's a figure crouched over it in the dark. The figure isn't wearing the green coat. The figure is wearing my coat, the one I had on when I ran, and it's crouched down doing something to the light with both hands, patient, careful, and the walk when it stands up and turns toward the house isn't heavy and flat-footed at all. It's got a hitch in the right knee. The crate in its hand is empty, and I've been sitting here on the kitchen floor doing the math, trying to make it be anything else. I think, and I could be wrong, that this is what he was carrying out to that dead ground all those years, load by patient load. Putting something back where it belonged so the rest of us could sleep. That's the story I'm telling myself anyway. And I understand why he wanted warning. The strip out there looks empty now, smooth and flat. And I keep telling myself it means everything's gone, that the ground just opened and took it back in a single night, that whatever he spent 30 years keeping down is loose. I don't know that, but it's out by my dead work light wearing my coat and moving like the only man who ever knew how to put it back. The cameras he made me install, the ones aimed so carefully at that fence, at that strip, so he'd get his warning. That fence runs between my work light and this house, 40 yards out. Nothing crosses it without the alert firing. That was the whole rule. It just fired. The north fence alert. One frame, time-stamped 9 seconds ago, a shape stepping over the line, and then the feed went smooth and empty again, and the dead strip is empty, and the stumps are empty. Which means it isn't at the fence anymore. It's already past the cameras on this side. It's somewhere between that light and this door, and I aimed every one of them the way he told me. So there's nothing pointed at the yard, and there's nothing pointed at the porch, and there is nothing at all pointed at the kitchen window that's 18 inches behind my head.